Okay, hello Cloud Gurus and welcome to this lecture. This lecture we're just going to do a recap of Identity Access Management or IAM. Now you should have learned this in the Certified Solutions Architect Associate, Certified Developer Associate or Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. As you recall from those three courses, I said that the key to passing all three of those exams is to understand how to build out VPCs inside out. And if you do that, then you'll have a really good chance of passing. Well, for the Certified Security Specialty, the key to passing this exam is understanding identity access management inside out, and in particular policies, and understanding how IAM policies relate to S3 bucket policies and how they also relate to S3 object ACLs. And then when you have a conflict between all three, how you resolve that. And there will be many questions on that in your exam. And it's actually really fun to do because in the exam, you'll get a whole bunch of different JSON policy templates and you'll have to go through and resolve it. You'll have to figure out what you have access to based off these different templates. And it's kind of like doing a Sudoku puzzle or doing some kind of puzzle. You'll sit there and you have all the pieces in front of you and you have to come up with a solution. So this section of the course is vital to being able to pass your exam. I would recommend that you watch it at least once, probably twice. And there, like I said, there'll be at least 5 or 10 questions on this topic coming up in the exam. So let's get started and just recap what IAM is. So IAM basically allows you to manage users and their levels of access to the AWS console. It's important to understand IAM and how it works, both for the exam and also administrating a company's AWS account in real life. Now, IAM, what does it give you? It gives you centralized control of your AWS account. It gives you shared access to your AWS account. It gives you granular permissions. It gives you identity federation, including Active Directory, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And again, a very important topic in the Certified Security Specialty exam is understanding how to integrate Active Directory with IAM. And we're going to cover that in this section of the course as well. It also gives you multi-factor authentication, which we're going to cover off. And it allows you to have temporary access for users and devices and services where necessary. And that's generally using Cognito. We will cover that off later on in the course. And it allows you to set up your own users, your own passwords and your own rotation policy. And it integrates with many different AWS services. And it supports PCI DSS compliance. Again, that's quite a popular topic that comes up in the security exam. You just need to understand what it is at a high level. And we will cover that off later on. So some critical terms in IAM, you have users, which is just your end users. So think people. We then have groups, which is basically a collection of users under one set of permissions. So you apply a policy to a group. Everyone within that group will then inherit that policy. Some policies obviously may conflict, especially if somebody is in a different group. So they might be in the HR group. They might also be in the system administrator group. So you will need to understand how to, basically troubleshoot conflicting IAM policies. Again, we are going to cover that off. We then have roles. So you create roles and you can then assign them to AWS resources. As you remember in the Solutions Architect Associate, Developer Associate, and SysOps Administrator Associate, we would typically assign a role to an EC2 instance, so it could access S3, for example. But we also did it for Lambda, so Lambda could write to S3. We did that in the Polylabs, etc., etc. We then also have policies, and this is key. So policy is a document that defines one or more permissions. It's always done in JSON, so it consists of always consists of key value pairs. We're going to cover that off in this section of the course. So before we get started with IAM, let's think about what it is when we first log into the AWS console, how we access IAM. And when we first log into the AWS console, we're given root level access. So let's start having a look at the root user. We're going to do that in the next lecture. And what we're going to do is a very practical thing, which is, let's say you've just started as a system administrator at an AWS based company. Let's assume that it's maybe 3 or 4 people, so not many people in the company. You've taken over from the last system administrator who's just left, and he or she would always log in using the root account. How do you now secure your AWS account from the system administrator who's left? Let's go ahead. If you've got the time, please join me in the next lecture and we'll have a look at that scenario.